guys, this is Brevort, and we are back on the Let's Play world today, and look what I can do! I can jump up here again, yay! So, we are in the 5A snapshot today, and they've reverted most of the sprinting changes, and the sneaking changes. So, the one that they didn't revert immediately was the one where you could not sprint while flying, but they've reverted that. That's cool. The other thing that's changed is that beacon. I didn't change anything with it, but they've made it so that it shows from further away now. There was definitely a quicker way to get over here than repeatedly using ender pearls, but that's fine. So let's go ahead and make this a yellow beacon, because this is haste, and haste's like in-game color is like yellow. So that would make sense. There we go. Perfect. I want to see what this looks like from a distance then. Oh, it's actually not that easy to tell that it's yellow, but it does have a different vibe to it. So they should render from the render distance now instead of 16 chunks, which is pretty cool. I misread the changelog and thought that it said they can render from further away, but that doesn't seem to be the case. Oh wait, that's weird. So if I'm not looking directly at it, it looks yellow, but if you look directly towards it, it looks white. Yeah, the range on this is insane. I flew all the way out to the Mushroom Island, which is like well over 150 chunks away, and I can still see the beacon beam. It is really glitchy though. I kind of have to get my screen in just the right spot for it to show, and I thought it was just like kind of a lack of detail thing, but even if I turn my field of view all the way down, it still doesn't show. But for some reason, if you have Quake Pro on and you tilt your screen at just the right angle, you can see it. I don't know why it's so glitchy like that. But, oh, I guess if I tilt my screen down, I can also see it. Saw it for a second there. There it is. So, I don't know why it's so glitchy like that. Hopefully that does get fixed. But, how far do we have to be before it becomes, like, really visible? Because we're about 2,500 blocks out. I want to see when it starts becoming, like, visible. Let's also set our field of view back to our normal. Okay, so a couple weird features with this. First of all, the weather affects it. However, before I actually show you that's true, if I go ahead and actually, I don't even have to do that. I can just take damage. You could see it when you take damage, and I don't know why that's the case. I'm guessing something to do with the damage tilt is causing it to render in front of the fog. And I don't even think that this is intentional that we can't see it during the rain, but I do like it as a feature because then it's like the rain is obscuring it. But yeah, you could see once we sleep, it starts rendering again. So over here, over in this mountain range over here, is where I noticed that the beacon beam first disappears. Somewhere in that like forest here. I can't pinpoint an exact spot on it because it seems to disappear when I get past a certain spot, and then it doesn't reappear till I go quite a bit closer. It's very glitchy. I don't know why it's so glitchy, but let's just face... Okay, so it's right about there, it seems. Alright, so after doing a little bit of math, it seems to be about 1,000 blocks where it starts to disappear, and it doesn't, like, fully disappear until... I don't actually know if it ever does, because I got about 2,500 blocks, and it didn't fully disappear, so I don't know what the deal with it is, but it's very glitchy past 1,000 blocks. Even here, you could see it kind of glitches out just by moving my mouse around, and that effect is worsened the further away you get. Alright, so a couple of things to note is, first of all, if you go through a portal or reload the world, you can see they're rendering now. If we go through and we come back... That was a long load, whoa. You'll actually notice that they don't render anymore. So, that's kind of interesting. I don't know if that's a bug or not. So last episode, I said I wanted to start working on the Outpost infrastructure project again, And that is exactly what we're going to be doing today. So let's get to work building this. This is going to be a lighthouse, and it's actually going to be the same design as one of my favorite builds I've ever made in one of my previous worlds. If you're wondering why I like to use resin blocks so much for stuff like this, it's because of that exact reason. If that were pretty much any other block... What is going on with my frame rate? Jeez. If that were pretty much any other block, I wouldn't have been able to break that whilst flying up. But because it was resin, it insta-mines instantly, even if... It mines instantly even if you are even if you're falling. Compared to a lot of other blocks which have the 5 times penalty. So like I can insta-mine the stone, but if I'm falling, it doesn't insta-mine. So that's one reason, or the main reason, why I like to use resin blocks as like a structural scaffolding. And scaffolding itself also technically functions that way, but it has some properties that I'd rather not deal with, like I can't place a scaffolding here. I'd need to do that, which is annoying, so. What was that animation? Jeez. All right, so we're pretty much done, at least with the outside of this. Now let's figure out what we want to do for the inside. One thing I really want to do is put in a bubble elevator here. The trapdoor was there because that was what was in the original design, but I think we're going to change it. So do this. And then we'll have like a bubble elevator here and a beacon as well. And I'm going to have it so the beacon can be toggled by doing different actions with a skulk sensor. So for example, walking near it will set a 5-minute timer, and then using a firework rocket in here will trigger it so that it toggles it permanently on or off. So it's kind of like the override to it. If it gets toggled on with the firework, it will stay on permanently. But if it's toggled on just by walking around here, it has a 5-minute timer. So that should be fairly easy to do, but we are going to go through the redstone for it together. So I feel like we recently tested this, but I want to see if we can pass beacon beams through glowstone. We can't. Is it actually off? It is. Okay. So we won't be able to do what I wanted to do, although I figured that was the case. So I wanted to have like glowstone kind of wrapping around the top up there, and then have the beacon beam kind of shoot through it. So here is how we are going to do all this. So on one side, this is the side that's going to be picking up the firework rockets. So if we do this, there's a copper bulb down there. We just have to get the input of that. So that'll turn on when it detects a firework burning up. And then the next firework that burns up will switch it back. I don't think it was within range of the thing. Sometimes I notice if you do it against the side of a block, a lot of times it'll get stuck. But I haven't been able to reproduce that. There we go. Use up my whole stack of rockets to do it. I haven't been able to reproduce that like consistently. So I might need to build like a little lip somewhere for to intentionally get rockets stuck on so they don't go too high. Because that's just kind of annoying. The other side here, we're going to have this. This is a composter set to 1 going into a calibrated skulk sensor with a shrieker here, just to make sure that it isn't picking up like mobs walking around up here. And then basically anytime we walk around, this is going to go to a dropper, which we... I need to use a pulse extender here, or else it does double. But I'm not too worried about it. If we do this, it missed. This is not done very well, but I can do it better. Oh, come on. How are all of them going to the left? There we go. Okay. So, and then they stacked with the other one, of course. Oh, man. Anyway, so there we go. So that will just, basically the beacon would be like under here. It'll push it off of the solid block off of the beacon so the beam can shoot through. That'll be the 5-minute timer. Then the other side of this will be hooked up to the copper bulb. And anytime, even if there isn't an item here, this will lock it on so that it's like an override state for it. So even if I haven't walked around it, this will override it and the beacon beam will be able to shoot through. So that's how we're going to do this. So it's pretty simple. And then when the item despawns after 5 minutes, that'll act as basically a 5-minute pulse extender. All right, so I set up a bubble column here. The way this is going to work, the beacon is going to be under here. When I'm up at the surface, I don't really need this to be on as a bubble column because I'll want to go down and not up. So basically, if it detects footsteps up there, it will switch it to be beacon mode. And then if I come down here, I can set it to be soul sand mode. Until it detects it needs to switch back to beacon mode, in which case it will turn off it'll move the soul sand out of the way and the beacon will turn back on. And also, if you're wondering, at the top of the lighthouse, there's a trapdoor, so it'll shoot through that. You can also use half slabs. Beacons will go through both bottom and top half slabs, but not double slabs. We need to send a signal from this sensor to down there to set this to not be bubble column mode anymore. Then from this side, this one will have it'll be the second. So basically the priority order will be, this will have the lowest priority. Then this will have the second lowest priority. So you can lock it on beacon mode. Then the third lowest, the highest priority will be the button at the bottom, which will turn on the soul sand, so we can always get out if we need to. To anyone who says that you don't need to save everything, this is exactly why we save everything, because we never know when we're gonna need a ton of nether brick. So this is why I have chests upon chests upon chests of netherrack. All right, so I think it is all set now, although there is one change that I want to make with this before we do anything. So if we walk around in here, it will turn on the beam, and it has a 5-minute timer before it shuts off. Additionally, this turns from a bubble column to just a regular water thing, so we can swim down. However, if we get to the bottom, then Then if we want to go up, it's not in bubble column mode. We just have to hit this button here, and then that will allow us to use bubble column mode. It'll shut off the beam for 1 minute. It basically overrides the 5-minute timer. And then it'll turn back on for the remainder of the 5 minutes. And then the final mode, which is like the lowest priority, is the always on mode. So like I said, is the lowest priority, so it's not going to override the 1 minute thing, but it'll lock it on, so that even after the 5 minutes are up, that's how you, oh, I think maybe that was the 1 minute was up at that exact second. That's kind of funny if it was. But yeah, that'll make it so it locks on. So even after the 5 minutes are up, it'll stay on, even without a player being there. I think I also want to change it so instead of it being players walking, because it keeps making the flappy sound, and also it's really easy to accidentally trigger, I think I want to make it where it's the player's wings flapping that do it. So let's change the setting on the thing. I think it's here. Oh. There we go. So now it should only activate if I flap my wings. There it goes. So as long as I'm not flying in here, it should be fine and not mess up stuff, but yeah. I hope you didn't think we were going to go all episode without working on the library, because that is exactly what we are doing right now. So there's a few things that we have to figure out before we start, because the first floor is pretty much done. Or the second floor or the third floor, depending on how you want to think about it. It's the floor with the number, the book numbers 200 through 299. So there'll be 2 floors below this and 2 floors above this. So it really depends on how you want to think about it, but it's the first one chronologically. Yes. So the way we're going to have the things we want to do on this floor are, we want a system, as with every floor, we want a system where we can move books into the little book rooms, the book nooks. And then we want to have a separate system where we can pull books out. And we want to be able to like manually go through and sort these. However, an issue that I already thought of was if we just have a barrel here. Ooh, there we go. I don't have barrels on me, but pretend that's a barrel. It'll blend in a lot better with the spruce, I promise. If we just put a barrel here and a hopper underneath it, immediately the hopper is going to start sucking out items, which is not what we want. Because if that does happen, if we accidentally put, this is sweeping edge, so if we accidentally put like sharpness in here, then we don't want to do that. Or if we, I guess more likely, if we put a sweeping edge 2 book in here, we only want to put level 3 in here because that's the ones we want to request from the pulling system. The way we are going to work around this is we want to check for where the player is, and then if the player is not nearby, then essentially it will switch over to this hopper will be enabled once again, and it'll be able to pull items out. Okay, so I got a bit of a design setup, but it's got some flaws, so we'll have to work out something a little bit different. But for now, this is what we've got. So if we have this book nook or this station or whatever you want to call it selected, this is sweeping edge. We're just right under where we were before. It'll power this. This is a light that checks to see if there's items. So basically we'll know that there aren't any books left. Like once we put in the code or push the button or whatever, however it's going to work, there'll be an indicator light to say whether or not there are items in the dropper ready to go. Assuming there are, when we press the button to get that book that we're requesting, then there'll be a singular button for all the books, but we'll put in the code to get this one. So once we do, it will be able to power this dropper here. It'll run a signal through this block, which goes into the dropper, and then we can do as many as we want. I don't know if we'll need, because like if we're doing something like mending or unbreaking, we might want to request a lot at once. But like even if we just do 5, it's only like 5 seconds to wait in between it. And then we still have to wait for the items to arrive. So honestly, I don't think it's a big deal that like we have to press and hold the button. Assuming that this is not the selected one, if we pull the lever, we can see that the signal will just go, if you look over here, the signal will just pass on to the next sector, which I think is density, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, density. Okay, cool. So the main issue with this is actually just getting the proximity sensor hooked up to the hopper. It shouldn't be terribly hard because all we have to do is power this barrel and it'll disable the hopper. If we put items in there, you can see they're not being pulled out. If we turn off the thing, it starts pulling them out. So it shouldn't be too hard. It's just going to be awkward trying to get the barrel powered from a proximity sensor, which is presumably going to be on this side. And I'm not sure what kind of proximity sensor I want to use yet. We'll figure that out sooner rather than later. But the other thing is, how are we going to store the books? So this is pretty simple. We're just going to run some hoppers over top of some other hoppers, which go into our barrels. And this is really easy because the way that this works is if you put in items, you would think that because these are all pointing to the left, they're going to go into this chest here. However, the way it actually works is hoppers will suck items from above them before the hoppers will push items. So if we put these in, they're going to end up in here, which is pretty cool. Because the items are, instead of going from... Where did I just put those? I guess there weren't that many. I thought there were a lot more. Instead of going into here, they'll start by filling up these. Then basically we'll just have to check for when this fills up with like a comparator. And if there's like more than 2 items in here, we'll like tell the system, we'll like flag the system and be like, hey, this one is full, so don't put items in, type of thing. Because if you do, they'll just despawn or back up further until they do despawn. So as far as I know, there's no way to sort between different types of enchanted books because they all have the same item value or item ID. Like you can sort between like different tools with like, for example, alloys. I think there's other ways to do it as well. But as far as I know, there's no way to sort between the same item with different like components. So for example, you can't differentiate a sweeping edge book from a density book. If there is a way, please do let me know, but as far as I know, there is no way to do that. So we're just gonna have to have like dedicated water streams that lead to each of these for each enchanted book, and then just like turn on and move the water around accordingly to where it's supposed to be going. Also, I hope it stops raining soon. All right, now for the part that I'm most excited about, we have the Ender Pearl teleporter system. At the end of each of these hallways, we are going to have a button that you can push. And when you push it, it makes a note block play. It's actually going to teleport us to the start room, but for now we just have a note block playing because we don't actually want to teleport. We just want to be able to troubleshoot the redstone. So the way this works is we have a dual-edged instant wire so that no matter how far away we are, we can teleport essentially instantly, effectively. The way this works is that if you don't have the torch here, this is a rising edge instant wire. And if you don't know what that means, it means if we hit the button, you'll notice that this that piston will immediately retract its block. but then it takes a second to re-extend. So this should function as a monostable circuit. Well, not exactly. It's actually this piston that's doing it. Once we put the torch here, this makes it dual-edged. The difference is a rising edge is when the signal first starts, it's instant. However, it still takes a bit to shut off, assuming that that's a monostable circuit. Dual edge means that it'll turn on and then immediately turn off. And then falling edge would mean it would wait for the delay to turn on, then instantly turn off, which is also possible, but in a different way. But that's not very practical. But this is the kind we have. If you look at the piston right there, when I hit this button, you can see it instantly pulses, and then the piston right after it will pulse in unison with it. So no matter how many chains of piston repeaters we put in, it will always still have 0 delay from that redstone to this redstone. So that's really cool, because no matter how many of these we connect, it's still going to be instant. However, we needed a way to, because this is powered, we can't just like send a not powered signal to here to shut this off. That doesn't work. So what we had to do is break the signal by pushing the redstone block that's powering it out of the way with a secondary piston. So I thought that was pretty cool. So if we do this, you can see the way it's actually depowering this piston here is it's just pushing the redstone block out of the way. And then we can repeat that as many times as we want. So we do the same thing here. We just simply have to connect up another piston here, and we could just keep repeating the process. And there we go. We have another instant line. And that's pretty much all there is to it. I did have to come up with this part myself. I wasn't sure how to do it for a while, and then I'm like, oh, we can just push the redstone block out of the way. And yeah, we can basically connect this whole place up and teleport with basically 0 delay. And the logic that this works on is based on the fact that when pistons retract, they all retract instantly. So you can see it kind of goes through the chain when they extend, but then when they retract, they all retract at the exact same time. So that is how you make a rising edge instant line. I guess technically that's a falling edge instant line, which isn't very helpful. But what you can do is change it out so that you are basically depowering it. And then you can have like a torch at the end as like a decoder, I guess. But to make it dual edge, which is actually kind of easier in a way, all you have to do is put torches on these blocks. And then when you push this button here, this will cause it to instantly retract all of the blocks. It's kind of hard to tell that it's doing it because they're moving in different directions. But if you look at these first two, you can see that they're both instantly retracting and then immediately re-extending. So it makes a dual edge instant line, which is pretty cool. And the reason that we want a dual edge is because here's what happens if we use a rising edge. We will teleport instantly, but then the trapdoor stays shut for a bit of time. And it didn't seem like super long, but the more, I'm pretty sure it's the more pistons you have, the longer you'll have to wait. I think it adds 1 redstone tick of delay per piston to the falling edge side of things, I think. I might be mistaken on that. But the way to work around that, like I said, all you have to do is put torches down, and that will instead make it instant. So now when we hit it, we teleport instantly, the trapdoor opens instantly, and we get the pearl all within a matter of a split second, as opposed to having to wait the length of the button press plus 1/10 of the amount of pistons in seconds. Yeah. So today's comment of the day says, the algorithm brought me here. Super interesting video topic, though I wish you would show more details on how you organize the books. Keep at it, and I wish you more growth in your upcoming videos. Cheers. Okay, you got it. So I did explain it, or I tried to explain it in the last episode, but I rewatched the video and I didn't explain it as well as I was hoping to. But I think it was because I didn't have the whole floor done at the time, so it didn't really make a whole lot of sense. So the way this works is the first digit is the type of tool that it is, and that determines which floor you're on. So the different types of tools are all-purpose, so that's like mending and unbreaking, mining tools, melee combat, ranged combat, and armor as our different floors. Then we have, this is the like one main long hallway for this floor. It just passes through this central room. But we have each turn off this hallway indicates a digit of precision past that. So basically determining the tool. If the digit is a 0 as your second digit, it means that it's a multi-purpose enchantment. For example, Smite, Bane of Arthropods, and Sharpness, because you could put them on both axes and swords. If we go to the next hallway, that would be, like I said, these are designating which tool. So this is swords. This is axes, which we don't talk about because there was one axe enchantment that they had in the combat tests, and then nothing came of that. So it's here, but it's not in Minecraft proper. So if it ever does get added, we have a spot for it. But for right now, there's no, that's not a thing. And then we have this hallway is 230, which is the mace enchantments. And then from here, the next digit is the mutually exclusive set. Oops, mutually exclusive set. I can't read apparently. That would be, for example, mace damage. So, for example, density and breach are in the same mutually exclusive set because you can't have them together. So density is 231.1 and breach is 231.2. So in here we have density, and in this room we have breach. And then since Windburst is not mutually exclusive to either of those enchantments, it has its own mutually exclusive set. And this is where I would store my Windburst books if I had them. But yeah, that's that would be where Windburst would be stored. And then also, for example, another mutually exclusive set, like I said, is Sharpness, Bane of Arthropods, and Smite. So like this room is where Smite is stored. So hopefully that made sense. An additional thing to note is that if you're making off the main hallway, if you're making left turns, it's an odd digit. And if you're making a right turn, it's an even digit. So this is the 210 hallway and this is the 220 hallway. Well, anyways, guys, that is about it for this one. I hope you enjoyed the video. Have yourselves a great day. Thanks for watching and goodbye.